Hey, Shauna, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Miss Erin Stanforth, are you ready? Are you ready? If I don't thump the gavel, nobody's gonna know what time it is. Yeah. I thought we could be here for a while if I didn't thump the gavel. Okay, with the power of the green gavel, I now call the Environmental Stewardship Committee meeting to order. I want to keep it to sit up front because she finishes her term this month and we're so grateful. Good afternoon and welcome to the June 13th, 2023 meeting of the Mecklenburg County Environmental Stewardship Committee. I am Mecklenburg County Commissioner Elaine Powell and I serve as the chair. This committee is committed to the important work of maintaining, protecting, and enhancing our environment so that all residents will thrive. A virtual attendance option is offered as an alternate mode of accessibility to our meeting today. We welcome the public who have been provided a call-in number to access this meeting. Those attending virtually are asked to display your full name on Zoom, as all attendance is recorded for the minutes. Additionally, virtual attendees are asked to remain muted and use the chat box to submit questions or comments that we will read aloud if time to the committee. The agenda, meeting minutes, and presentations for today were sent out to those who are already on our distribution list. If anyone did not receive these and you would like electronic copies of any materials provided today or in the past, please make these requests via email to Erin Stanforth. Her email is Erin, ERIN, Stanforth, STANFORTH @mecnc.gov. We will begin today's meeting by having each board member identify him or herself so that the record will reflect who is present and participating in this meeting. Again, I am Mecklenburg County Commissioner Elaine Powell. I represent the people of District 1, which is all of North Mecklenburg, Huntersville, Davidson, Cornelius, North Charlotte, and all of the ETJ. I also serve as vice chair of the board and chair of this committee. Next, Commissioner Jarrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Jarrell, District 4.
Good afternoon. My name is Lee Altman, County Commissioner serving at large.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Rodriguez McDowell, elected by the people of District 6.
For the record, all commissioners on Environmental Stewardship Committee have acknowledged their presence for the meeting. We have a quorum. I will now ask Erin Stanforth to assist with introductions for others who are joining us. And I'd also like for everyone that's in attendance to introduce themselves and their affiliation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. With us virtually, we have Barbara Blow-Weiss, Britt Clampett, Chris Matthews, Don Ciccarelli, Ebenezer Jarlaputi, Juliana Hawley, Megan Green, Olivia Edwards, Rusty Rozelle, Shauna Caldwell, and Lee Jones.
And then your, staff.
And in person, I'm Erin Stanforth. I'm the Sustainability and Resiliency Manager for Mecklenburg County.
Abby Wyatt. I am the Livable Mech Coordinator with Mecklenburg County.
Oh, Kiva, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for having me. My name is Kiva Samuel, and I serve as the Chair of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. Good to be here.
We're happy to have you here. Allison.
Allison Craig, Planning Director, City of Charlotte. Leslie Johnson, Deputy County Manager.
Philip.
Philip Gustman, Vice Chair of the Planning Commission, of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission.
Candace Rory, City of Charlotte Planning.
Dave Benton, Planning.
Douglas Walton, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission.
Andrew Blumenthal, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission.
Welcome. It's nice to have so many people here. Oh, and now behind, I sat here so I could see everyone, and now behind me.
Hope Wright, Sustain Charlotte.
Lyric Bailey, Sustain Charlotte.
And my name's Gordon Miller, and I'm just a resident.
Thank you for being here. Just a resident. Yes, we represent you.
She does.
Next, I will entertain a motion to approve the May 2nd, 2023 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell, seconded by Commissioner Altman. All in favor, say aye. And the minutes are approved unanimously. I now recognize Allison Craig, who is the new City of Charlotte Planning Director, and Kiba Samuel, together Planning Commission Chair, to discuss an overview of the City of Charlotte's planning, design, and development. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, commissioners, for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. And I want to just take a moment before I even start to thank the county staff. We've been doing a lot of really important work for the county and for the city over the last couple of years, and have a lot of really important work ahead. And we couldn't have done this without the partnership of our county staff. And so I just want to say a special thank you to Leslie Johnson and Aaron Stanforth, Ebenezer, Lee, Jones, Patrick Granson, for just all of the partnership over the years and the work that we've been doing. So, and please stay engaged in the work we have ahead. Next slide. So this is a joint presentation between myself and Kiba Samuel. I'm going to give a quick overview of just what is under the purview of the planning department, and then turn it over to Kiba to talk a little bit about how the Planning Commission really helps to bridge the work between the city and the county, and help advance the important efforts that we have ongoing. And then I want to talk a little bit about community area planning. This is the next phase in the work that the department has ahead, and it's really important for the community to get involved and have a say in how they want our city to grow and our county to grow, and what they want for the future of the places that are important to them. And then I wanted to touch on the rezoning process. I think that's a lot of things that you hear from the community, whether it's support or frustrations for the process. We're always wanting to improve transparency and access to information, and wanted to share with you some updates that we have on that particular process. Next slide. So I just wanted to talk about really the 7 divisions that are under my purview. So first is just our business and executive services, and that's really the operations of the department. But 2 years ago, this July, we created a new division called the Community Tree Canopy Preservation Division, and this is really intended to bring tree canopy policy and tree canopy regulations under one place, as it relates to our private areas, our non-public areas, and really wanting to make sure that we're thinking through those policies and those regulations together. This has been an opportunity where we've worked a lot with the county on starting to get data for looking at future tree canopy data, and wanting to make decisions based on what that data is telling us in terms of what we need to do to better protect our tree canopy. We have a division called Design and Preservation. That's where our historic districts are, our placemaking program, and our urban design center. We've got entitlement services, and in this particular group is where we have the Unified Development Ordinance and the rezoning process. Land development, this is an area where we have a great deal of partnership with Ebenezer and Patrick, and just the permitting parts that the city is responsible for. So looking at the Charlotte Development Center and how we work with Louisa on permitting projects that are being proposed in the city and the county. Long-range planning, this is our where our long-range plans are created. So the comprehensive plan and the community area planning that I'll talk about a little bit later. And then last but not least, CRTPO, so our regional transportation planning, is also under our department. And with that, I will turn it over to Kiba.
Thank you, Allison. Next slide, please. I believe it was in March that I was before the entire board sharing some of our recent accomplishments as it pertains to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. So some of these slides may seem familiar to you. So, but for the benefit of the public, of course, our key functions in terms of how we serve city and county residents and partner with county and city government departments, we are internal stakeholders. So we're almost like a middleman right, between city, county, and residents. We want to make sure that key initiatives that are coming forth from the planning department are vetted from all three of those angles, most importantly from the resident angle. So we are an appointed body, of course, that we serve, and we are the voice for the community. That's part of what we do. So we want to make sure that the engagement that happens around huge initiatives such as the the Unified Development Ordinance, also called the UDO, and the Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan are some examples. So we help vet, strengthen, encourage, and facilitate information sharing. That's another key role that we play, serving as a liaison to strengthen relationships between city and county and other advisory boards. We make recommendations, of course, to city council and to county commission regarding land use matters, including rezonings particularly. That is a lot for an advisory board, but it's a very important work. And before I go any further, I just wanted to make mention that the two gentlemen to my left, as you guys know, I will be ending my service at the end of June, and these two gentlemen will be your future leadership for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. And the four of us, Philip, Douglas, Andrew, and myself, we form the executive committee of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. And that's basically, we serve as chair and vice chair of the two different bodies that make up the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. Happy they were able to join us today. The executive committee helps to form and shape agenda topics that's brought forth through the Planning Commission. And I'm happy to say that some of you have actually been able to join us at some of the meetings. So you're privy to some of the information that we discuss today, though. I am most interested in hearing the questions and feedback and specific asks that you all may have of the Planning Commission to see how we can further collaborate and facilitate information sharing. That to me is one of the most important functions that we serve. Next slide, please. In December, I think I first shared with you guys our adopted 2023 work plan. In that work plan, as you guys can remember, we had some key initiatives that we wanted to implement. Of interest to this body, probably of highest interest to this body anyways, is the Environment and Sustainability Support Statement that we adopted in 2020. That statement was adopted in 2020. We've shared that with you guys in future presentations, but we wanted to revisit it to see how it can be further strengthened, considering hearing of some of the funding that this body and the Board of County Commission has applied funding to move forward some environment and sustainability efforts. And then one of the other things that we did as part of our work program for 2023 was to create successfully a permanent subcommittee that would be able to keep focus on items that fall under the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission's purview that pertain to environmental matters. So that subcommittee, I believe, will begin its work at the top of fiscal year 2024, which is just a few weeks from now. And we are excited about the work that they will bring forth. We also, with the help of Deputy Director Johnson, Aaron Stanforth, this body also laid eyes on this document. The Chief Sustainability and Resiliency Office for the city, Sarah Hazel and team, including Dr. Byers, all lent help, support, feedback to establish another item on our work program, which is the rezoning review considerations. The document itself probably came to you under a different name, and please forgive me if I don't remember, because this has been months in the making. And Erin is smiling over there because she has seen this document in a couple different iterations. If I was, I did have a forward thought to share this document in advance with Erin to include in this agenda packet, but it would have been a bit premature because it was just adopted by the Planning Commission yesterday. So a short 24 hours ago. But this rezoning review considerations document, it basically helps us, again, keep focus on items that impact our environment through the lens of the rezoning petition. So as we are evaluating rezoning petition, as we are approving developers to move and shape our built environment, we know that can be some unforeseen circumstances that are not always favorable. And we want as much as possible to be able to prevent any of those items that could be damaging for the public. And things on this particular list are things that address air quality, cultural preservation, energy and natural resources, infrastructure, utilities, park and rec, light and glare, light pollution, of course, environmental health issues. There's a ton, and I will definitely share this with you now that we have it in its final iteration. I believe that the future leadership of the Planning Commission will dictate how soon this document actually gets put into use. But there's nothing here that prevents it from becoming immediately useful for us. So definitely be on the lookout for discussion and discourse at rezoning hearings, perhaps, and definitely in the the zoning committee's work session that may highlight some of this work. Is that the end of my slide? Again, I am very anxious to hear what questions that you guys might have for me and the Planning Commission, and I'm happy to be here to address those questions should you have any.
All right, next slide. One more. So I wanted to make sure that you all are aware of some important work that we have upcoming, and really appreciate the Planning Commission really helping to support this work and promote this work as we go along. So as you're aware, we adopted the first comprehensive plan that we've had in 45 years in June of 2021. And this is really forward thinking, wanting our county and our city to be more inclusive and equitable and be strategic in how we're planning for growth. We adopted the policy map in March of 2022, and this is really translating the place-based policies of the comprehensive plan into a map that then helps guide future rezoning decisions and other infrastructure decisions as well. To complement that, the vision work and the policy map work that we've adopted, we just adopted this past August and went into effect on June the 1st, our first unified development ordinance. So that went into effect on June 1, and really is updating our regulations, and it serves to implement the vision of the comprehensive plan. Next slide. So the next thing that's underway, and I believe Samuel presented this to County Commission a little while back talking about this, but it is extremely important for everyone to get involved, because while the comprehensive plan set forth sort of broader community goals and vision for what we want to see, we know that all of our communities and neighborhoods are different. And this is an opportunity to really start to get community level guidance for growth and development, including different types of mobility and infrastructure and other community facilities. We're doing this citywide for the first time and countywide for the first time. We really in the past have done area plans that may not have spanned the entire breadth of the city. They may be outdated. And this is the first time we're really looking at all of the geographies together to make this more equitable as well as more efficient, so that everyone has guidance as to what their community could see in the future. So by doing it this way, it helps facilitate conversations and collaboration among neighborhoods, and helps us reimagine barriers that might serve as neighborhood boundaries, and really look at policies citywide. Next slide. So we're in the beginning phase of this, and so if your constituents have not gotten involved yet, we are still very early in the process, and there's an opportunity to get involved. Phase 1, you can go and look at your different geographies, and we've sort of done some existing conditions and some reports that you can go and see where your particular community areas of interest may lack access to housing or jobs or goods. And sort of that's some background material for each of the different geographies. Right now, we're in phase 2, we're really starting to look at that policy map and making refinements to that policy map. In the spring and fall of next year, next calendar year, is really when we start to look at programs and projects and infrastructure and what's needed in each of those particular geographies. And then through fall and winter of 2024 and 2025, we really start to have an actual plan and then move that towards adoption. So really important for residents to engage with us and talk about what is important to the places that they care about. Next slide. So what will be an outcome of this? We'll have, it's really 14 or 15 community area plans. They'll have different development concepts for focus areas. We'll have lists and maps of needs for infrastructure, different private or public programs, and then have a strategy is actually how we're going to implement those. We will have a refined policy map that will get adopted by City Council. And we expect that we'll have some recommended revisions to the overall comprehensive plan. So we've got a group of partners that are working with my planning staff on developing these area plans that include a number of people from the county and from different organizations throughout the city, really wanting this to be an interdepartmental effort where everyone has a voice and talking about the things that are most important to them. Next slide. And then lastly, wanted to talk a little bit about the rezoning process. Next slide. So Chair Samuel, I can still say that for a couple more days. Yeah. Talked a little bit about some of the work that Planning Commission has led in terms of some of the considerations that they will have when the zoning committee is talking to petitioners. But some of the other things we wanted to talk with you about today is we actually just sent this to City Council today. It's sort of an early look at the rezoning petitions that are coming in. And so once they're in the queue, being able to provide information about what's being proposed and where it is, just so you can get some advance notice of potential activity in your particular districts. And so one of the things we would like to extend is to then send that notification to county commissioners if that's of interest, so you get advance notice of activity that may be in your areas. We are also working to sort of revamp the rezoning staff analysis. And so being able to better describe if there are any infrastructure impacts or concerns, what those might be. We work closely with county staff to identify areas of concern, but sometimes the comments are maybe in an attachment that's harder to find, and really wanting to make the information more accessible to you and to your constituents. And then finally, we are about to launch a new application that I think is really cool. It's called Development Near Me, and you can go in and type in any address and it'll tell you every single type of project that is happening around you. So it could be CIP projects, building permit information, building additions, rezonings, just development projects that are occurring. So everything that's happening around you. So we're in the final stage of testing that and hope to launch that very soon. I think it'll be of great interest to many people. And with that, I think that's my last slide. And I just wanted to, before I turn it over to you all for questions, I just wanted to thank the planning commissioners, both the outgoing chair and vice chair, for all of your support throughout the years and getting us to where we are and being that important bridge between the city and the county. And then thank our incoming chair and vice chair for being here today and passing the baton over to you in a few weeks to help continue this important work. Thank you.
I'll just add, if I may, Madam Chair, to Allison's comments, that if you back up one slide, I think, Erin, this rezoning process enhancements, I think that I have at some shape, form, or fashion in some time in the very recent past spoken to each of you regarding rezoning matters. We know that this is not under your purview. We always welcome the questions, but some of these process enhancements, and this is just a testament to how open planning staff is to feedback have come directly from my communication with you regarding accessibility to information, transparency in finding information, direction in finding information. So some of the process enhancements that Allison just touched on and rezoning program manager Dave Patton, who is with us, can dive a little deeper if you would like. But they come from comments through our interaction. And I just wanted to share that and lift that up for the body.
Thank you. And I want to ask Philip to just be thinking about anything that you'd like to add later on, since you have served so long. Who would like to begin? Do you have any questions? Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, yeah, I really appreciate the presentation. I really appreciate, this sort of working together. And just the way I feel like you guys are trying to pull us in and try to share information. So a couple of things I just wanted to question was, I think one of the beautiful things that you said, Kiba, was how you guys are like a middleman between the residents and the city and the county. And that you're, you mean to be a voice for the community. And so I was just wondering, could you talk a little bit about what your community engagement is like? Like, are folks, who send us emails, are they also emailing you guys? Like here's recently with the rezonings in my district, in my area, I've gotten a lot of emails of people that are like, would you please just stop building, And, they know that there's these big projects that are on that are being thought of and things like that. And they want to know, like, we want you to represent us and stuff like that. And so I'm like, are they also sending those to you guys, or do they even know that you're supposed to be kind of a middleman? Do they feel that access?
That's a great question. And brings to mind something that I didn't touch on in my earlier slide, but I think this is a fitting opportunity to share. Another piece of our work program for 2023 was to host our own community engagement sessions that had not been done before for the Planning Commission. We set out to do 4 initiated by the Planning Commission, and then we were very graciously offered some time at a few town halls for City Council. So we've been on the road, so to speak, and it is through hearing feedback, much like what you're describing, from folks who either are very frustrated with what they see happening in their communities, or are frustrations behind what they're experiencing on their commute to work, or their lack of information around the rezoning process. This can be somewhat of a mythical process for some people. And we know that people who don't plan as a profession, some of this can be daunting to be able to understand. So in response to that frustration and our own frustration behind not being able to be as effective in helping people who bring forth feedback like that, that's why that work program was created, so that we can help inform, educate, and arm our residents with the information that they need to be able to impactfully have built on the ground what they want to see in their communities. Thank you to Commissioner Powell for joining us for our last session. And we heard just what you described. Stop building. This is too much. You're inviting too many people. We are very open to feedback. We do receive a lot of what you're mentioning, but in my experience in interacting with Board of County Commission, when rezoning matters come to my attention, it's usually not the same people. So you guys have a different reach for your constituents than City Council does, because the people who are contacting City Council are not the same people that you may pass my way. So I think that you will continue to play a key role in the rezoning process, but please do not hesitate to ever lean on myself, Allison, Dave, Planning Commission, to either take that off of your plate, because we all understand that you have a lot to do. And with the rezoning process not even being under your purview, if you could just be a conduit to pass along the concern, that would be most helpful. But yes, we do get those same concerns. But we play a role, and I hope that future leadership continues to just encourage that that conduit, so that we can continue to share information, continue to arm public with the information that they need to impact their built environment.
Okay, well, that's really great. I think it would be awesome to maybe sort of know where to send those, like, now that you're not necessarily, like, I know you, I feel, comfortable with you, but if, with in your absence, and I also don't know, I know there's like two different parts of the zoning, and there's like planning and zoning, and like that's a little bit confusing for me. So I'd love to know the proper channel for that. And I also just want to mention that I really, really appreciate this idea of advance notice of rezonings. I think people think that, that we just know what's going on. Well, I'll just speak for myself. They think I know what's going on, and I really don't. In my district necessarily, like I don't really know. It's a huge district. Like, I have no idea with some of these things are that people are talking about. So having advance notice and being able to kind of head those things off at the pass would be awesome, just for the awareness. And I really also appreciate the environmental lens and this idea of the committee that you guys are having. I think that is fantastic. And I think, gosh, why didn't we already have this? Like that's a no-brainer. Like, it's excellent that you guys are doing that. So I think that's it for now for questions or comments from me. Thank you.
And you'll get another chance
Okay.
if you think of some more.
Okay.
Commissioner Altman.
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. The environmental sustainability support statement. Can we bring that slide back up? So I am really focused on this. This seems very constructive. To have a tool that asks the question of every development, how does this affect imperviousness, which of course has to do with, rushing water, which can, further damage our environment, and the cleanliness of our water supply. How does this impact tree canopy? Well, I guess you're probably already doing that, but, how does this, noise and light and air, will this be developed into a checklist that every zoning application has to be completed or evaluated by an independent person, and that goes into the public presentation? Because even if you can't require certain environmental protections or workarounds, I think it adds to the pressure and the accountability if you get a low rating, even if there's no teeth behind it. And of course, I want there to be teeth, but if we don't have the ability because of the General Assembly to put more teeth, then I think this would be a really good, second position of something I'd like to see happen. So can you, I think what you said is that it hasn't been put into practice yet, but there's nothing prohibiting it from becoming effective. So what's the plan with it?
Thank you so much for your question, Commissioner Altman. I think that I'll first mention that everything, pretty sure 99% of what is in this, and I think what you're referring to is the rezoning review considerations. 99% of what's in this document, and I'll be happy to share it with you during this meeting, is supported through the UDO. So it does have teeth. So I just wanted to circle back. So this checklist is, again, nothing new. It's not anything novel. We've been asking these questions, probably not on every single petition, probably not every single question on every petition, but in some shape, form, or fashion over the past 3 or 4 years on rezonings, at least through my service. What the goal, one of the goals for this document was to make it known to planning and the development community that we would begin to kind of raise to the surface some of the matters of our environment that are kind of buried sometimes in the rezoning process. You always hear about school overcrowding. You always hear about congestion and road condition. You always hear about traffic and sidewalks, but you don't always hear about the items that are in here. And so although, yes, planning department does their thing in terms of reviewing it for the compliance with our unified development ordinance, but also we're going to be checking it because sometimes, to be really frank, the developer will do the minimum. And if this can be a document to kind of help strengthen what they bring forth to planning for approval or what they might be proposing, then I hope it does play a part in that. In terms of making this a piece of the analysis that's presented to the public, we haven't gone that far. We didn't consider that. We considered this more of an internal document that that the zoning committee specifically uses as we are reviewing rezoning petitions. And if we're using it, and yes, the intent is to use it as a checklist, if we're using it for every petition, what we hope happens is that petitioners then begin with this document in their developments. So in terms of responding to our replies after reviewing the checklist, maybe they'll begin to bring forth more environmentally friendly development.
Yeah, I think it would be great if they had, like some sort of checklist that says, here's the minimums that we all know state law requires. And if we obviously demand that you meet the minimums, you have to comply with state law. But if you go 20% over, we'll give you a B+ rating. And if you go over at 30%, we'll give you an A+ rating. And if you throw in some extra, solar panels on the ceiling, we'll tout you as, a leader in the space for like something that gold stars that help to incentivize. I mean, look, this stuff costs money, and I know that developers are interested in the bottom line, but there are huge examples of business models where garnering public loyalty because you're perceived as a business that's doing something important that we care about. I remember I changed my cell phone carrier back in the 90s because they were doing some good work, and I just feel like there's a lot of potential to incentivize going above and beyond, which is what we need to do, because what is the law is not enough. So thank you.
That's a very key comment. And I think what you might be highlighting or touching on might be some friendly edits to a potential bonus structure around at least TOD development. Bonus structure currently exists. Like there's a height bonus if you add affordability, for instance, or a certain level of affordable units to your development. So there may be an opportunity there to revisit some of those incentives to include what's in this checklist.
Yeah, and perhaps our staff could help develop some reasonable, targets that we're seeing we really need more sensitivity and investment around to help guide you with that.
I do want to give Allison an opportunity to chime in if she wanted to add anything there.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, thanks, Kiba, that we did expand the bonus program in the UDO. And so there's some additional height allowed for both open space as well as for lead construction. So there are some things in there that really help to incentivize those important elements.
Great.
And then I also wanted to mention too, the conversation that occurs in the zoning committee meeting where you're talking through the rezoning consideration list, that of course will go into the recommendation that goes before council, and it gets included in the rezoning packet. So it is captured in the conversation going forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Jarrell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everyone, for the presentations and for being here. As a commissioner, the majority of questions that I get are around park and rec, social services, and then it's going to be something I know nothing about: planning, zoning, development, right? It's always a hot topic within the community. So this is really, really helpful. A couple of things, and I just want to kind of take it from a rudimentary sort of approach at this point. And I'll just ask my question, then you guys can chime in. I want to talk UDO first. I'm really curious to understand or get a better understanding of how the UDO, the application of equity, help me get a better understanding what that is, because I've gotten a lot of feedback there. So I really want to understand that, what the thought process is behind that. The other thing, with respect to development, planning, and zoning, I personally, and I think a lot of my constituents, we always get this sense we're not against development, but it seems like development is often, it appears like it's unchecked, like there's no parameters or requirements. And I think it's probably because I'm not aware of what we're allowed to ask for. I'm sure that's what it is, right? I'm sure I just don't understand what we can ask for and what we cannot ask for. And if there are certain, we have in this community 5, 6, 10 plans, 20, 40, 30, 25, whatever, all these plans. I'm really curious to know how do you all take into consideration all of these plans that are out there? Which one do you use as a quote unquote overlay to say this is the vision for the community? Because I don't have a clue. When I don't know if you can take the Center City plan and then that's one overlay, and then you take the broader plan as an overlay. And how do we know if the community is really moving in the direction that was set out 20 years ago or when these plans were created? Like, I don't have a clue around those elements. But I would say, understanding when we're pushing back on these rezoning. So we have plenty of developers. If the developers are not going to take into consideration the county perspective and our needs with open space and even infrastructure requirements, the far eastern part of my district is a perfect example. When you drive the Fenco area, like it's a perfect example of a bomb dropping, and we don't have the support. And there's plenty of places across the county that way. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you, and again, answer, if you don't mind answering what you can, and if it makes sense or if you need me to clarify.
Sure. So I'll first start with what's driving decisions, and I'll say the comprehensive plan is really intended to be that sort of umbrella vision, but it does have complementary efforts, including our strategic mobility plan that's coming from CDOT. But that's why the interdepartmental group that we have working on the comprehensive plan and the area plans really helps to ensure that we're connecting all those dots and making sure that the elements that connect those are included in the overarching vision. And so that's really the overarching vision. In terms of how do you know if you're successful? So in the comprehensive plan for each of the 10 plan goals, in the very beginning of each of those chapters, there's a list of metrics. And so it's like the percent increase in this or the percent improvement of Y. And so that will get captured in a dashboard. So it's a comprehensive plan dashboard that is live. We launched it last July. And some of the data isn't spatial. Some of the data isn't even captured yet. There's like new things that we need to measure. But over time, that is a way in which we can visually and numerically measure how we're performing. And you can go into that dashboard and you can look at both countywide, or you could look at just your neighborhood profile area and start to say, how is my access to jobs improved, or how is the tree canopy changed? And so you can do that per neighborhood area. So I feel like that's a really important component. The application of equity, so we recognize as a central tenet of the comprehensive plan that we have not developed in a manner that's fair to everyone, particularly underrepresented communities. And planning actually has played a role in that in terms of redlining and how our zoning practices have been in the past. And so how we tackle that is not just within the UDO, it's plans and programs and policies. It's things like we've got a funding source in the UDO for trees that goes into large tree assistant program that we would prioritize that funding in areas that don't have access to tree canopy. There's infrastructure recommendations that majority of it goes into areas that lack services. So it's kind of built in a lot of different elements, really starting in the comprehensive plan and then trying to translate that into making improvements through our regulations. So it's not something that we can fix overnight, but it's something that we feel very passionately about and something that we are working on a number of different fronts, from area planning to UDOs to plans and programs and policies that we do in partnership with our folks at the county, as well as within the city, other city departments as well. Hopefully that answers your question.
Well, there was just one, the development without requirements is sort of like that unchecked approach.
So I'm sorry, say that again.
So I was commenting about the perspective that it appears to some that we have development and approvals without any level of requirements to go alongside of those.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say that in the past, we've operated as a deal-making city and it's not as a plan-making city. And that's really what we're trying to change, is have better plans in place and better requirements in place. And what I think is really probably unknown or not really realized is that the requirements that are now built into the UDO are much stronger than we've ever had in the past. And so whether it relates to tree canopy, so really starting to look at canopy across the entire city development and in our residential areas. Stormwater requirements too are much stronger. Now going forward with in cooperation with CDOT, we would only require traffic impact studies through a rezoning process. And now with the comprehensive transportation review that CDOT led, we now will require traffic improvements and multimodal improvements, which is even more important because we really need to get away from thinking about, moving cars. It's about moving people. And so now there's requirements for multimodal improvements that will be required in the rezoning process and when you're when you're developing by right. And so things like bus shelters or bus stops or sidewalk improvements beyond what's required by code today. So really wanting the development community to play an important part in providing the needed infrastructure and amenities that the community is asking for.
I think I have like 200 questions. I think the most important thing is that we're all together. Like I've kind of been dreaming of this for a long time. And so I really appreciate that you're here. I appreciate that the Planning Commission is here. I appreciate that the intent is for us to work together on improving things. And so I really was glad to see the slide that says rezoning process enhancements. I can't describe what it's like, especially in my district, to hear from hundreds of people when they find out that there's a rezoning in ETJ and they don't have an elected leader. And so I'm it. And I take my job seriously. I will represent them. And I won't go into the details, but I mean, I had to call Kiba recently at the last minute because someone in planning said, well, you don't have a city council person. And she said, well, who do I have? And they said, well, you probably have a county commissioner. You can find out who that is if you dial 311. So when they dialed 311, they gave the old commissioner from many, many years ago. Yeah, so even 311 doesn't know who the commissioners are. And so at the very last minute, this person who needed representation, I was out of town, I couldn't go there. Kiba went there. Thank God she reads her email in the middle of the night. But there's just so many frustrations. That's just one. I could list many. And so I'm thankful for this partnership because, you know, if you read the article last week, I was quoted saying, and I'll say it anywhere, you can say you're a partner. And that's just where there are just words to me. But being a partner takes work. And we are willing to do that because if development continues as it is, as it has been, this will not be a place that I want to retire. We need to really pay attention to protecting our natural resources, and the burden cannot fall all on the county. You know, I hear people say, well, that's the county. That's the county. Well, it's all of us. Like, we all live in the county. And so we need to consider these things from the very beginning. And I just want to give some history of my frustration so that hopefully as we move forward, we can make things better. You know, how do we make things better when by right you can do this, this, and this? And why aren't some things required in here that are critical infrastructure? If we can't require them, we need to consider them because they're part of a healthy, livable community. But just for instance, I worked for 2 years, never missed a meeting on the Catawba area plan. So when Commissioner Jarrell asked this question, I just want to jump out of my chair, like, what is the answer? Because 2 years, I didn't miss a meeting. I knew what every person in the community wanted for the Catawba area plan from 2008 to 2010. I know city staff. I know that, like, you guys are good people who really want the best. I was so proud to have my name on that plan as a stakeholder. And then, you know, looking backward, I feel kind of naive because when we would look, you know, you look at the Catawba area, you look at the tree canopy, the significant tree canopy, it's like the major part of the lungs of Mecklenburg County. And so in that plan, the Catawba area plan, in our mission, we were protecting natural resources and really thinking through protecting the Catawba River. Not just water quantity or water supply, but water quality. Like, really thinking through, like, what does it mean when this many people live? The projections were not like they are. We thought the projections were big of what was coming. It's bigger than what was projected. And then who knew a developer was assembling parcels for Catawba River District? And here comes Catawba River District in critical watershed. And in order to, like, get attention, the Park and Rec Commission asks, because before I was elected, this is years, you know, I've been involved for, this is year number 34. The Park Commission asks, park staff says, like, we'd like to have 160-ish, maybe more, acres of protected parkland. And we're at 20. And there's a frustration in the community from people who believe that their voices mattered and that the Catawba area plan mattered. And so when I was in my district in the meeting where the planning commission was, the frustration came into the meeting. It landed there, and it lands, like, you know, whenever I'm talking to that area. And so I represent District 1, which marries up to where I'm talking about. But people call me all the time because they remember that I was engaged as a stakeholder. So people show up for these area plans and the blueprint for growth, believing that their voices matter. not just, like one person's idea is going to influence the whole thing. It's collective. Everyone's working together with staff. And so I know Alicia and Alberto like really well because of all of that engagement and coming up with what everyone agrees upon. And then you see the things go forward that other instances that don't fit into it. And you're like, why do we even do plans? So there's, like you said, there's a 2030, 2040, 2050, and it's confusing to the public. And so I see both sides, like I see it from an elected leader side and I see it from a citizen side. Because if you're going to show up, like you're trying to make a difference and you are the community that we serve, what happens when you show up and all the work is done and the area plan is disregarded? And I think we're going to get more and more and more pressure from developers to do things that would not have ever been done. Like one of the constituents said, you know why there's nothing there? Because old time farmers were smart enough not to contaminate their creeks. But now they're coming in for every piece of land. And so it is impacting our environment. And while I love parks, I love them. I love recreation. Parks do more to protect natural resources than anything else in Mecklenburg County. I mean, land use and environmental services and stormwater, and we all work together through Parks and Rec to protect natural resources in addition to everything else. And so while you can protect trees, it's like, are you protecting forests? And these are questions I think we all need to work together on. How do we do better? Because you want this to continue to be a place where you can breathe the clean air and drink clean water. And it's serious. It's not something that you can go backwards on. And while people talk about how important schools are, they are. Education is so important. But how can anyone get a good education if they can't breathe the air or drink the water? And so I'm just really glad you're here. And how do we work together? Because the burden cannot be thrown on the county. We all have to work together. And I'll just stop there for any feedback that anybody wants to give.
No, I would just say thank you for that. And I do look forward to future partnerships. I mean, there are a number of goals in the comprehensive plan that relate to the environment, that relate to air quality. And those are opportunities for us to develop plans or programs or even regulations to help improve those, where we're allowed, of course, by state law. Trees are close to my heart, so I'll start there in that we will be updating our urban forest master plan. So that's really once we get the guidance that we're working with the county and with Tree Charlotte on tree canopy analysis. And once we get that data, it will really help inform what we do about our tree canopy and what changes we might need to make both from a regulatory and programmatic way. And so I think that's an area that I'm really excited that we can do better things going forward and improving that. In terms of air quality, certainly looking forward to working with Aaron and Leslie on, how we might be able to advance those particular areas of concern and priority that you all have. So I really enjoy the working relationship that we have with Leslie and Aaron. We meet on a regular basis, talking through things that they've heard from you all or from different residences. And so, I mean, this is not the last time I'll come here, and it's not the last conversation that we'll have, and look forward to seeing how we can advance things that improve the quality of life.
Sure. I have a couple more first. So I would like to see Sarah Hazel more involved. It's just a personal, I don't understand why she's not more involved.
She is. And in fact, I was sad and happy that one of our program managers from planning actually left and is now working for Sarah Hazel. And so she brings with her a wealth of planning knowledge and connections that is now working directly for Sarah Hazel. And so it just helps even strengthen the work that we do together. So, so that's, I think, a great opportunity.
I think so too, because you can't just say that, you know, you care about the environment, you have to do it.
Mhm.
And I think that'll be good. I would like to also see a joint annual meeting, even maybe biannual, between the Planning Commission and the Park Commission. If that's something that you would do, Mr. Welton, if you would entertain that. I think that would be very valuable. And I think, I love Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell's question about how do we know who to call? And we can always go straight to the chair of whatever body that we're appointing to, and we can go to Allison as well. But I think it's really important to remember to utilize our advisory boards. They work really hard, especially the Planning Commission and the Park Commission. I love it when Sam Spencer took pictures of the binders. They were like this high. And when you do that much work, you want people to ask you to be engaged. You don't want to just say, what am I doing here if nobody's going to ask me? And so I think that we need to really work to utilize our appointed board members much more and better. And so get ready, Mr. Welton. And now Commissioner Altman.
Kiba, I think I remember you saying that whenever you get a big stack of zoning applications and you go out and look at the physical space. Is that right? And theoretically, the whole city council does that? Do folks go actually look at what they're voting on? Do you know?
I believe that there are opportunities for council members. Council members have the highest level of access to plans, developers, coordinating site visits, etc. Some employ every opportunity, others do not. I won't speak to which instances that does or does not happen, but they certainly have the capability to do that.
And if memory serves, well, I was just reading that Huntersville has recently voted down a major development, and there's another one that is in jeopardy, or maybe just got voted down also. And didn't Cornelius have a year-long moratorium on new zoning applications? I believe they did. It resulted in a big change in the city town council in Cornelius. And so I guess my question to you is, partners in Mecklenburg County, towns in the north, have made some pretty strong statements to slow down development or reconsider the speed of development because of some of these concerns. Are there any examples of city council saying no to development on your recommendation or public outcry because of the pace of development? And I ask because I don't sort of focus closely enough, and I'm just wondering, is there any sentiment about the pace of development that actually gets expressed through votes, not just rhetoric on the city council?
That's a huge question. And in about 20 seconds, I am going to invite our rezoning program manager to this table, because he probably have some data around this in some shape, form, or fashion. I've seen it happen on a more rare occasion in public. What you guys may not be privy to, or what the public may not be privy to, is that happens before council vote 90% of the time.
Right.
So if there is opposition to a development and there is public outcry and communities band together to really express their dissatisfaction with what a developer may be proposing, there is power in that. Unfortunately, you don't see that because the council doesn't get to vote no. The petitioner will voluntarily drop the petition.
But the process is still working.
The process
If the
does work.
community's voice is carrying the day,
Mhm.
then the process is functioning, and that's really what I'm focused on. And when that has happened, what are the categories of reasons? Like a category of reason might be, we don't want more fast food or drive-through only. I remember that was a big thing, it might be pace of development. It might be an equity issue. Like, what would you say are the top 3 reasons that the community has slowed or nixed a project successfully?
I think the top reason, in my experience, is the public's perception of a risk to life safety due to traffic concerns. Most recent example comes to mind in Council District 4, right around Mallard Creek Church Road, Harris Boulevard area. We're seeing a lot of development there. And Mallard Creek Elementary is, Mallard Creek is a state maintained road. And so CDOT doesn't have a lot of power to expand it, change it, etc., without going through NCDOT.
Good luck.
I'm sure you understand the challenges there. And so there's been public outcry that has worked to the community's advantage to get a developer to back off or change a plan drastically so that it's better for the community in which they're proposing the build. So the public's input weighs heavily, and that may not always play out on TV, is what I want to stress.
Okay, well, that's so safety. What would be the next top 2?
Just, I think, general density questions or concerns about density. For instance, if a project came through and it was 400 apartment homes or townhomes next to a single family development with a little bit less density, there's concerns there. There is noise. Sometimes you'll have a small business proposing to build somewhat close to a residential neighborhood. And if that small business might be a bar or something that might produce noise, public outcry can help either change again, either the time frame in which noise, like a live band, for instance, playing outside, may be allowed to play, or it may encourage that developer to look for a different site option. So those are the top things that come to mind. Dave, is there something that you'd like to add, or Allison?
So one of the other things I would say, I'd probably say compatibility is an area, and that can be seen in a lot of different ways, whether it's massing or style of development. I think there are some things that, the community raises concerns about that. One area I think that probably ought to keep its point about kind of being something that's not seen visibly is that we have a number of projects and petitioners that come to planning staff with ideas and proposals that don't even make it into the queue, really, because we start to look at, we now have a comprehensive plan and we're now working on, community specific guidance. A lot of these things happen because we don't have updated plans. But now now we have a vision. And so when someone comes in and that vision is not being translated into a proposal, it doesn't even make it through. I mean, the staff will describe, you're going to have to make some significant changes for us to be able to support this proposal. And so some of that even happens before you get into the public eye. But what we're responding to from a staff perspective is hearing what the community has articulated to us as being what they are concerned about or what they most want to prioritize. And so that's probably another element of the conversation, that the community's voice really matters.
Well, thank you.
Does the development near me include county projects?
It includes any development project, any building permit, any demo addition. So really any type of project that involves construction, really, of any kind. So
Any
it's pretty
construction project,
What's that? I'm sorry.
any development with construction.
Yes, I mean, so, but that even like if you're putting a pool on your, I mean, it's even capturing things that are that granular. So it's really any kind of development activity that's occurring either through private development or through public construction of improvements.
Thank you. And I don't know if you have the answer to this. During COVID, the lawyers that represent developers were allowed to do the community input meetings on Zoom or virtually. And it's my understanding that they're still allowed to do it virtually, which is a benefit to them. I'm concerned about that. It seems like there should be an option for hybrid where like there's in-person required. And then if there's a senior citizen that wants to be engaged, they could Zoom in if possible. Do you have any input on that?
Yeah, that's tough because there's never any right solution because hybrid can be challenging. Even, it's hard to have people in the room and also engage with people on the screen. I think we're still trying to figure out how to do that better. And there are some community members that prefer virtual because they don't have to have transportation or don't have to provide or find childcare. And then some people really like in person. I don't think we've quite figured that out, but we're not making decisions about that to the developers' benefit. It's really about like, what's the best way that we can get information to people, and it may be even outside of that community meeting. It's about making sure that people have access to information that's on the website. It's about access to information and getting your questions answered. So in summary, I'm not sure we've really figured out the best approach for that because people have different preferences.
So I understand that, but it just seems like there should be more than one option. You can't, to me, the Zoom is very convenient for them. They have all the participants on mute and just so happen to run out of time. Like, oh yeah, the meeting ends at 7:30 and how sad, too bad, you just email me your comments. And I think there's a lot lost and more frustration from these virtual meetings for many people who, especially in ETJ. So I just want to put that out there because I've heard it, I've experienced it, and I've heard it more than once.
Sure, that's something I can talk to Dave about. I mean, we want to make sure people have an opportunity to get information and to ask questions. And it's sometimes in this environment, it's hard to figure out what's the best platform. But we'll talk about that further.
And I think the Acela is really impossible for the average person to even think about trying to figure out Acela, if I'm saying it the right way. Yeah, so I think it's hard for city council members because they aren't planners. And so how do you make the information easier for the community to understand and, without a 6-month class, and also easy for your elected leaders to like be able to look at and know if they need to pursue it any further. Because I got a lot of questions about a former Superfund site going into, you were there. Yeah. So I got a lot of questions about that. And it's difficult for people that don't even know, because they thought I said super fun, like fun. And I thought that's what happens when you work for so long on different things. You just assume other people know. And I think it happens to every person in this room. Like we start to use acronyms and then so in the meeting, the public meeting I was in last week with Kiva and in my district, there's language that people are trying to say what they're worried about coming up right next to their house. And they have a slide up for the planning commission of when your voice matters. Well, by the time it's coming to them, they're way past the time your voice mattered. And it's like the last minute. And how do we do better on getting information to people beyond 100 yards requirement? Is that right? Is it 100 yards or 100 feet?
And we
Three.
actually do more than what is required by state law, but that's where that development near me app, I think, will be really helpful. You can, I mean, you can get into Excella from there, but you can click on a project and it'll pop up like what it is. This is the contact person. This is their email address. This is their phone number. And so you can get information about something without having to go into Excella. So I think that will also be very helpful for people when we're able to launch that officially.
I hope so. And I just want us to have that mindfulness of what it's like to be a citizen that never had to deal with this. And you're 65 years old and now all of a sudden it's urgent and you're like, what do I do? And someone tells you to call 311.
Right.
Commissioner Jarrell?
Yeah, real quick, while we have you here, with the changes in allowable density at this point, can you speak to this argument around the more affluent communities are able to sort of circumnavigate this? I guess if you have, I don't know if it's HOA or I'm not really sure how they're doing this, but you know, when we talk about equity, I'm really concerned that if that is truly the case, where, you know, we've gone through this whole process as a community, but then the purpose of it will be defeated to a certain degree because there's this workaround in this process that we're not going to achieve the desired outcome. And I think that's a legitimate concern. And again, I'm not close enough to it, you know, as a commissioner, but it appears to me that it's a reasonable concern. And so I would love to know if that is true, number one, how is it being addressed? If it can be addressed, and what's the impact to the outcome, the desired outcomes?
So you're talking specifically about duplexes and triplexes?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
So housing supply and housing affordability are probably my favorite topic to talk about. So I could probably talk about that for a whole hour, but but I'll answer your question. But then if you want to talk further, I'm always excited to talk about it. So I think the concern that has been raised by some is that there are neighborhoods that are in more affluent areas that have homeowners associations that potentially may restrict other types of housing units, so duplexes and triplexes. And so the reason for introducing different housing options in that way in the comprehensive plan and in the UDO is that we have an issue with affordability that's very real and very strong, and it's not, you know, it's not dissimilar than other cities. I mean, this is a problem in many cities, but in order to actually improve affordability, we have to have different housing options, and we have to have different options for people in different stages of their life. Whether or not HOAs are a tool is still, you know, to prevent that, and what is the actual outcome? Is that better? Or I think it actually drives prices higher to not have different housing options. But we want residents to have the ability to control and change what's happening in their community to the best of their abilities. So Housing and Neighborhood Services has a lot of information on their website about how you can start a homeowners association if that's what you really want to do. But the concern that's raised about about displacement and what that ultimately looks like for our community is something that we are partnering with Housing and Neighborhood Services on an anti-displacement strategy. And we're really looking at neighborhoods and making sure we're prioritizing neighborhoods that have the highest risk and they're most vulnerable for a number of tools that we have to help make sure that they stay in their homes. They have information about what their homes are worth and help them make the right decisions that mitigate change in their neighborhood. And so there's a lot of different ways that you talk about that and address that. And I'm happy to discuss with you further at another time, but it's something that I feel very passionate about, that we want to make sure we have enough housing, but we also want to make sure that we're managing change in communities and not having communities change really quickly. And there are provisions in the UDO for specifically for duplexes and triplexes that whatever is constructed in those communities has to be in scale with what's already there. So if the height's on either side of you or like say 24 feet, you can't go above that with a duplex or a triplex, but you could actually with a single family home. And so I think it's helping introduce sort of gentle density to help improve our housing options while managing the change that could occur over time. So, but happy to talk
I'll
more.
circle it with
Yeah.
you offline because I have a ton of questions around that. And specifically because when you look at East Charlotte, you know, we're already the highest density, you know, densely populated area within the community. And so I just have a lot of questions and I think we as county commissioners really should be at the table and our staff providing voice around this with respect to potential options, solutions, and ways that we need to really address some of the impact.
And I give some credit to FENCO too. They've really done a very good job of getting organized and involved and all that. So I think that really is helpful to have that direct connection to that group. So kudos to
I
them.
would shout out FENCO and Charlotte East. So
Yep, and Charlotte East. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. But I definitely am gonna circle up with you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I want to follow up on that and I'll get around to you. I think what Commissioner Drell said is really important throughout the county, everywhere. But as far as density goes, I keep hearing how there's a 4.5 acre park at Eastland Yards and yay, like that's the density around that will put a huge burden on that tiny little park. And so the massive population around that 4.5 acres needs way more than 4.5 acres. And all the people that own dogs are going to use that as their dog park. And I cannot tell you, I don't have the numbers, but I was there one day when we flagged the dog do at Romare. And I think it was 1,300 flags of dog do at Romare, which is the same size as the Eastland Yards Park. What happens when there's so much density that the parkland becomes a dog do park? I mean, we really have to consider these things when we're making decisions for the future. And density is good, like yay, density, but we also have to have balance of all the things on your list, but not just trees. Like it can't be crepe myrtles. It has to be native trees that support the species here. And working, so I just ask wherever we are in the county, like that we're true partners, that you're working closely with us, with Parks and Rec, with Louisa, because the decisions that are made by city council impact the entire county. And same for my towns. You know, I represent the ETJ of the towns. And so I know a lot more because the towns are smaller than Charlotte. But what's happening, I think that what I'm hearing from people in my district and District 2 is a lot of places that weren't developed were because people didn't want to disturb critical watershed and wetlands, and they were smart enough to protect the environment. And now by right, people can come in and do these things. And if that's the case, how do we do it better? How do we make it so that they don't do the bare minimum? And now I'll go to Commissioner Altman for the last.
Yeah, I realize it's too much questions, so I'll.
And so since we have 2 more minutes, I really want to recognize the advisory board, planning commission members that are here. And I would, if you don't mind, Phil, if you would just stand up and say your name and what you want your elected leaders to know.
Sure. Phil Gusman, Vice Chair, current Chair of Zoning. And I would just say, as far as connecting to the zoning committee, I think we can continue to work on better ways to make that connection. But Nancy, yes, Nancy, the chair, that's a good way to get the ball rolling. Remember, you can have them and share the names of everybody on that zoning committee with all of your constituents. I mean, we get a lot of email, a lot of email. You're absolutely correct. We know the feeling, at least. We don't know if they're the exact same people, but we certainly hear it. And it does have an impact and can. And just a week ago in this very room, it had a significant impact, of course. So I would say that would be the big thing.
And you served for 6 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it was a lot of work. Thank you. Thank you for your service. And then our new chairman for the planning commission, if you would like to stand up, please, and tell us your name and whatever you want us to know.
So you can get it.
Okay.
Hey, everybody, my name is Douglas Walton, and I guess I'm chairman-elect, did I get it right, Candace? Of the Planning Commission for next year. And for each one of the commissioners here, I will be sending you a note, and we'll get half an hour of Zoom or something in, so we can have a conversation about just to make the connection and how we'll go forward. But the election was yesterday. I got stuff on my plate this week. I'll get to you. But I do want to do, one of the things I want to do is to increase the influence that we have as a planning commission. And part of getting that influence across is making sure that you guys don't ask us questions because you know everything already. That's one of the things I want to take this place to. And so that's about that. And I will pass it on to Andrew, who's going to be introducing himself.
Yeah, Andrew Blumenthal, so incoming vice chair of the planning commission and anticipated chair of the planning committee. So a little bit less relevant to a lot of the conversation today, but not that we still don't have a lot of impact with, with the county, the city, and everything that's going on. Don't have much to add beyond what Douglas said. I think I look forward to continuing to build relationships. I know that both of us are county appointees to the planning commission. And see where it goes from there. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
And just wanted to add one more before I give this thing up. July 5th in this room at 5:30 is our next zoning work session. So for those of you who had a question about anything that is a county commissioner in this room, I would invite you to come peruse one of these chairs along the wall and join us and understand the process a little bit. You only have to come once, but I think it would be very useful for you to come in. And I'm going to invite the rest of your commissioners who aren't in the room too. So really do want you guys to come and sit in one of these once and understand the discussion that goes on. So.
Thank you. Mr. Is it Batten? Would you like to say anything?
No, I'm good for today. Thank you. Just appreciate being here. Yeah.
Say it's just all those words.
I just wanted to make sure. And
They will be here on the 5th of July, so you can hear him talk then.
all right, I'm going to give you the last word. Chair Samuel.
Why, thank you, Madam Chair. I have enjoyed this visit. I think this arena is probably one of the most important I've sat in all year. With Board of County Commission members, I often talk about the bridge that we need to build between city and county so that the respective priorities are lifted. My desire is that the sharing of priorities, Commissioner Jarrell mentioned, how do developers know what our priorities are? They seem to not care what our priorities are. And I encourage you to keep lifting up your priorities because you have connections, you appoint people to this body who should understand what your priorities are. The people that you assign or delegate, or that's likely Deputy Director Johnson's under her purview, the people that you assign to the intergovernmental work group that kind of helps to vet the Unified Development Ordinance, make sure they know what your priorities are so that translation can occur more effectively. This is probably the beginning. I think that Allison has said in recent conversation that we certainly look forward to this presentation, but just hearing from you guys a little bit more frequently on what you'd like to see and how we could be more helpful in terms of the entire planning department. But we know that planning is not within your purview. We know that development is not within the county's purview. But having a baseline understanding is probably where you're fastly approaching with as much concern that's coming your way. And I think that you still, despite my departure, will have some partners that are willing to share, be available and accessible to answer your concerns. We don't want to toss this on your plate. You have enough to do, and we need you doing those things more effectively. Provide that feedback, continue to be a conduit of information. But more importantly, just continue to share the concerns, because without you, we may not otherwise hear them. Thank you for your time today.
If I had a gold frog award, you would get it. Thank you for your service. I feel like I should have brought you a bouquet today because you really, but you still have a couple more weeks. Thank you to everyone. I really hope this is a part of a strong partnership. Thank you.
Move to adjourn. Second.
Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell moved to adjourn. Commissioner Altman, second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
It is